Hey guys, welcome to Cape Cowl Cafe. I'm Nemo, and today we're going to be reacting to your guys' Batman hot takes. If you guys enjoy the video at any point today, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button, but let's hop right in. Alright, first take of the day. I like the takes on Mr. Freeze where he is actually evil. Even the New 52 gives more sense for why Batman would beat him up for the 50th time instead of helping his wife. Yeah, I agree, definitely. I definitely see where you're coming from with this one. Just because Mr. Freeze starts out as this sympathetic and tragic villain does not mean that he needs to stay that way. I mean, leading this life of crime for so long, Batman's patience is gonna run out. You know, there's only so many excuses that you can make when you keep making the wrong choice over and over again for years. And also, just because a bad thing happened to somebody doesn't mean that they're a good person. You know, Mr. Freeze is tragic. It's sad what happened to his wife. Does not mean that he's a good guy, you know? And this is perfectly summed up in Mr. Freeze One Bad Day, where we see that Victor Freeze wasn't really the best husband. He was kind of controlling, he didn't really care about what his wife wanted, and he was more focused on his work. And so, well, yeah, it's still tragic what happened to him. He's not a good person, and I can definitely see why Batman would, kind of stop caring as much over time, because Victor just keeps making the wrong choice over and over again. Alright, next up, The Court of Owls is the best start-to-finish storyline of all time. From Bruce not believing in the court to him kind of losing his mind, and then just the unraveling of the court is such a good storyline, and in my opinion, makes it the best storyline. I really like The Court of Owls, but I think I like the idea of them a lot more than I actually like how their story was implemented in the New 52. I mean, best storyline of all time? Are we being for real? Start to finish? Like, yeah, the first two, sections of the story were really good. I really enjoyed Batman being stuck in the Court of Owls as like the labyrinth under the city and all that cool stuff. But the Thomas Wayne Jr. crap they pulled at the end, no, okay? I am so sick and tired of the secret hidden sibling trope that they keep pulling out of their asses for all of these new modern day comics because they don't have any other stories to tell. We've seen it with Batman, we've seen it with Nightwing, even Spider-Man has had a secret sister in the past. Can we just be done with the secret sibling storyline? It is so tired, please. Alright, next up, Batman is not crazy. He's just more passionate and dedicated. You know, two things can be true at once, okay? Batman can be a mentally ill person and also just be very passionate and dedicated to what he does, you know? And I feel like a lot of people are afraid of Batman having flaws, and it's because they want Batman to be this perfect hero that people can project themselves onto. Everyone wants to be able to relate to their favorite characters. That's why Spider-Man is so popular. Everybody relates to Spider-Man and the struggles that he goes through. Now, Batman being the coolest hero ever, of course people want to relate to him, but the fact is, you're not Batman, all right? You're not going to be able to relate to Batman on that kind of level. Yes, we can all relate to Batman in certain ways, but not all of them, okay? He is a very distinct character, and he's not just going to be this self-insert fan fiction character that you can just be like, oh yeah, that's me. No, you're not Batman. Okay? And besides, Batman being, mentally ill to a degree is what makes him interesting. It is the main reason why he cannot cross that line and take a life, okay? The whole speech from the Red Hood where he's like, oh, if I kill, I go down into that place, I'll never come back. That's just what Batman tells himself. That's how he justifies his one rule in his head, but it's not the reality of how he actually functions on the inside. Batman he's broken. He's mentally broken. He just can't cross that line. He can't do it. And I don't think he's able to accept the reality of his own mental illness, which is why he just thinks that he's, operating on a higher level than other people, even though he has all of these, allies and other heroes around him that are criticizing him, being like, hey, Batman, yeah, you probably should have killed the Joker, especially after everything he did. But Batman is just so set in his ways that he cannot do it. I just feel like Batman being mentally ill makes him way more interesting, and these fictional characters can have flaws, okay? They do not need to be perfect. Alright, next up, Batman 2004 has the best Mr. Freeze design. Instead of a fishbowl, he has a literal iceberg and shoots ice from his hands rather than just a gun. Man, this one is tough because yeah, as much as I love the classic B-Task Mr. Freeze design, the 2004 show is my personal favorite Batman show, and yeah, this Freeze design is just straight up S tier. It is so cool, so badass, and yeah, you can argue, oh, this Mr. Freeze sucks because he's written horribly, the origin story isn't the same, I don't like his personality. Yeah, that's fair, but if you're just watching the show on mute and you're just looking at like the design and the way he looks, it's straight fire, like, come on. Alright, next up, in my opinion, Batman is best when he has some level of dad vibes and a full Bat family, like in the Batman Wayne Family Adventures webcomic. See, like, I was going to agree with you. You had me in the first half, and then you had to mention that dumbass webcomic, okay? I swear, stan culture is single-handedly ruining the image of the Bat family across social media, okay? Every character in that webcomic has been turned into a caricature devoid of any personality. Like, everything in there is just happy-go-lucky all the time, and everyone just says things that make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, and it's just, no. It's just corny and it's lame. The Wayne Family Adventures webcomic feels like if all of the members of the Bat family were placed into The Sims. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. I don't like it. But yes, I do agree with you. Batman is at his best when he's placed in that father figure role, much like in the Batman and Robin Year One comic, where they're actually telling a heartfelt story about Bruce and Dick's relationship as father and son, rather than just trying to put the members of the Bat family into a Disney Channel show. Like, come on, there's a right way to do it. Alright, next up, Batman's love life is and always has been the least interesting thing about him as a character. Even in the last 20 years, where they have tried to push Catwoman as the more prevalent love interest, no relationship for Batman will ever be on the level of Superman and Lois, Sue and Reed, Peter and MJ, and the other most iconic comic relationships. At the end of the day, his biggest priority and true love is the city of Gotham. Yes, I 100% agree, and I feel like this falls under the same self-insert problem from earlier, where people idolize Batman to the point where they don't want to see him having any kind of character flaws or negative characteristics, because then, that's not my Batman. Like, Batman is very devoted when it comes to the mission, you know, protecting Gotham City, being the Dark Knight. That's not going to leave a lot of time for love, and especially with somebody as unstable as Selina Kyle, that relationship is designed to be very on and off. It's not supposed to be this perfect, happily ever after kind of relationship, okay? Ultimately, I think it's way more interesting to see Batman have to choose between pursuing love and the mission, okay? And I think Andrea Beaumont from Mask of the Phantasm is the best love interest we've ever seen for the character, and by best, that doesn't mean that I want to see him end up with her. I just think that she's the best written and the most interesting. In that movie, he's ready to give up everything that he prepared for, the mission, being Batman, all of it, because he fell in love. But eventually, he becomes so convinced in his own head that his parents would want him to keep the promise he made rather than pursue a life with Andrea and being happy.
I know I made a promise, but I didn't see this coming. I didn't count on being happy. Please, tell me that it's okay.
And it's way more interesting than Batman just ending up with Catwoman at the end of the story, you know? And I feel like the majority of Batman's suffering throughout his life is somewhat self-inflicted. Like, obviously his parents being killed, that doesn't count. Everything that he forces himself to do, he forces himself to be Batman, he forces himself to cut people off, to give up on having a normal, happy life. He gives up Andrea Beaumont, and it just makes him more interesting and more tragic as a character. And so, you know, this lack of a love life is one of those self-inflicted tragedies that just, it makes him way more fun to read. All right, next up, hot take. At some point, Batman should run for being mayor or commissioner. Now, I see what you mean. I really do. This sounds really interesting, and it could be something different. However, it goes against the idea of Batman. Batman exists because these positions of authority in like the city government and stuff like that just aren't effective, okay? The city is so corrupt and the criminals have such a sway and control over these official positions of power and the police and the courts and all of it, that Batman is the only logical solution. You have to dress up as a bat and beat up the criminals, because like if Bruce Wayne, you know, could have changed the city as mayor or commissioner, he would have done it already. But he couldn't, and that's why he became Batman, you know? Everyone who is in a position of power like that is vulnerable to being manipulated or controlled or taken out. That's why Batman had to become a symbol, something that was incorruptible, unkillable. If Batman ran for mayor, he could easily just be assassinated by the Falcone family or something. But as Batman, you know, that's a lasting idea that's going to stick with people. And I think this idea is presented perfectly in The Batman, where we see the criminals are afraid of just the shadows in the alleyways. They think Batman could be anywhere because he's not just a man who could be killed or assassinated or manipulated or bought off. He's an idea. And I don't know, I just feel like Bruce Wayne entering one of these positions of power is just kind of counterintuitive and puts him in more danger than is really worth it, you know? I don't know if this makes sense. All right, next up, how they are making a Clayface movie without even addressing the elephant in the room. I mean Batman. Now, I am excited for Clayface. I really am, okay? I promise. But I do see your concern, because Batman is a core pillar of the DC universe, and the DCU and James Gunn and the studio, all that, they don't really seem to be all that concerned about Batman, and maybe they are behind the scenes, but he just doesn't really feel like a priority, and this whole Clayface thing, it's getting me a little worried that we're just gonna have a repeat of the Sony Spider-Man villain universe. Now, I hope I'm wrong, okay? I'm not just trying to hate on this movie or hate on the DCU, because I really want to love everything that's going on here, but, after we've been burned so many times, it's a little hard to be patient, But I really hope that we just don't get a bunch of movies that are about Batman villains where Batman doesn't appear, but then no Batman. That was a huge problem that I had with the Joker movie, because yeah, it was technically a good movie, but Joker, at the end of the day, does not work without Batman. Those two characters are intertwined, and if you try to tell a story about Joker without Batman in some capacity, it just doesn't work. And I feel the same about most of his villains. Obviously you can spin them off into different projects like Suicide Squad that can do their own things, but Batman still needs to have been involved at some point in their careers, and I'm just not seeing any sign of that. So hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully the Clayface movie is everything that we've been, wanting when it comes to a DC horror movie, and it looks like it probably will be. I'm just a little concerned about the DCU's priorities when it comes to Batman. That's all. All right, next up, Dark Patterns is the best original Batman story since The Long Halloween. Yes, yes, yes. If you have not read Dark Patterns, please go read it. I feel like in 10 years' time, this story will be talked about in the same way that The Long Halloween currently is. It is just one of those classic, timeless Batman stories that it's just going to stand the test of time, It is just that good. Go read it. All right, next up, Batman's parents' death doesn't justify his dark, brooding persona and should also not be placed as one of DC's most tragic characters. Other characters like Supergirl, Martian Manhunter, etc. have lost way more and aren't edgelords. I see what you mean, but everyone grieves in their own way, and like I said before, most of Batman's suffering is self-inflicted, and that is why it's so sad and so tragic. Yeah, Martian Manhunter and Supergirl have lost entire planets, their entire civilizations wiped out, and they, seem to be less kind of edgy and brooding than Batman. But also, are you the grieving police? Who are you to dictate the grieving process of an 8-year-old boy who just watched his parents get gunned down in an alley in front of him? Everyone's different, so you can't really compare people's suffering. This just seems like a weird thing to be hung up on, in my opinion. Batman Returns is the best Batman film. Funny thing, I actually tried to rewatch this a while ago so I could do a Tim Burton Batman retrospective video, and I honestly couldn't finish it, okay? Batman's barely in the movie. It's too much Tim Burton, not enough Batman, and the focus is all on oh, look how sexual Catwoman is, and look how grotesque and disgusting the Penguin is. And it's yeah, we get it, Tim Burton. You're a gross guy, and you like to make all your characters weird and disgusting, okay? We get it. Please move on with the movie, but it's just no, I don't like that movie. Also, you can't take a Batman movie where he kills 30 people and then call it the best Batman movie ever. That's not how it works. All right, next up, the Dark Knight movies are more Christopher Nolan movies than Batman movies. Batman Begins is the closest to being Batman, while The Dark Knight and especially The Dark Knight Rises are Nolan movies. Now, this has been a big talking point online for the last few months, and I have to agree. I think that the Dark Knight trilogy are excellent crime thriller movies, but they're not really good Batman movies. They're action movies with a Batman coat of paint. Now, that's not to say that, Batman movies can't be realistic or they have to be fantastical. Batman has been both, and he can be both, and both can be really good. But I also feel like this trilogy just forgets about the mythological aspects of Batman, the horror elements, he feels less like a creature of the night and more just like a soldier. Everything in these movies is so militarized. All right, next up, hot take. The Long Halloween is overrated. So for context, I got into comics a few years ago and I heard a lot of people saying that The Long Halloween was really good. So when I finally read it, I was just kind of disappointed. I mean, it wasn't bad, I was just disappointed. All right, now here's my take on this. I feel like The Long Halloween isn't the best Batman story, but it is the best Batman story to recommend to new readers. And like, it's not because it's the best book ever written, but because it introduces you to so many elements of Batman in one cohesive story. You know, like you have almost every single major Batman villain present in this book. You get the origin of Two-Face, you get the fall of the regular crime families and the rise of costumed freaks. You get to see a look into Bruce's psyche when he's exposed to Scarecrow's fear gas. You get to see Catwoman. It has pretty much everything, and it's a really good starting point. And you can go straight from the Long Halloween into Dark Victory and continue that story. So it's pretty much just the perfect jumping off point for new readers. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it all, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button, and drop in the comments down below your Batman hot takes. They might be featured in part 2. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys later.